Welcome to the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, December 16th. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join us live, we have chat room. We've got some folks that are gathered in there. They just like to talk to each other and torment me, and that's okay. I've got an article I wanted to share with you. Actually, I wanted to share it last week, but I lost my voice. The dateline is Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois. Once upon a time, it was a very conservative evangelical Christian college. Now, it's a hotbed of secular psychosocial chaos. It seems while the Republicans at the college, I'm assuming the student Republicans, have asked Ryan Bomberger to speak. They've asked him to come and speak at a Black Lives Matter meeting on the subject Black Lives Matter in and outside the womb. This is an event they want to hold on the campus. Ryan Bomberger is a man of color. That's his description. But he went on to denounce both the eugenics that spawns abortions and the effects it's having on the black population. Planned Parenthood was birthed, he says, in eugenic racism. And in that he's telling the truth. That's exactly what it was. It was the product of one, and I can't remember her name right now, but she's the gal who is behind the abortion movement, going back to the 20s and 30s, a women's lib type even then. But whatever this organization, this movement was at the beginning, it has never changed. These folks in this movement women's lib movement, I guess primarily, have never severed themselves from that timeline. They've never discontinued the connection. How do you sever from your past this sort of thing if every year you give out the Margaret Sanger Award? That's her name. Couldn't think of it. You don't give out rewards to people you don't hold in high regard. Following the presentation, a 30-minute Q&A session was held for the students, which gave them a chance to ask questions. Bomberger stayed past the scheduled time in order to answer additional questions. 6 days after the forum, Bomberger was denounced in an open letter by Student Body President Lauren Rowley, Student Body Vice President Tyler Waller, and Executive Vice President of Community Diversity, Sammy Shields. In the letter, which was written to the university, the students criticized Bomberger's visit. They wrote, "The speaker made several comments at the event that deeply troubled members of our community." The article did not state what comments they were. His comments, they went on, said, surrounding the topic of race, made many students, staff, and faculty of color feel unheard, underrepresented, and unsafe on our campus. They went on to state how it was imperative to respond to the speaker's disrespectful rhetoric. Keep in mind, he was not disrespectful in how he was saying what he was saying. And they did not actually include any particular comments they found offensive, so it's left to your imagination. It was Bomberger who pointed out that the letter did not acknowledge his racial background, nor the name of the special interest group that had invited him to speak at the college. He wrote, "I am a person of color," a clarifying fact which you conveniently left out of your letter of denouncement. "I was primarily presenting a perspective of those who are never heard, are always underrepresented, and are actually unsafe. The unborn, After getting in contact with Wheaton College, CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, reports that the three students would not comment further at this time because they say Baumberger's organization has threatened to take legal action. That, according to college media relations department. At this time, Baumberger accuses the students of defamation. Wheaton College told CBN News Mr. Baumberger claims he's been ignored by Wheaton's administration, but that's not the case. The Radiance Foundation emailed a threat to sue 3 college students and blind copied a few college employees. This was followed by a second email, this time addressing several employees, blind copying a few others. At that point, Wheaton administrators reached out to the Baumbergers directly to hear their concern. Baumberger stated that his offer for a discussion has been rejected by the college. Do I need to tell you what's happening here? The white supremacists, the Margaret Sangers of this world, of a bygone era, have morphed into the progressive social architects we now understand. Their tactics are different. They speak differently, but their goals are the same. They don't like people who are different from them. It's the same philosophy that kept the black community in slavery until a Republican president set them free. Not until after a bitter civil war that killed more Americans than all the wars we've fought since. Then they kept them at bay with Jim Crow laws, treating them as less than human beings. And when these persecuted people stood up to them, they found water hoses and dogs being used to keep them in their place. When the rest of the country found out what was going on, they responded by denouncing these racists for what they were. The tide was turning, and these Democrats saw the handwriting on the wall, and they changed. When Texas Democrat Senator Lyndon Johnson came along, he was a racist. When a president, he was a closet racist. He said of his decision to nominate Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, a black man, to do that rather than a less famous black judge, he said, when I appoint a nigger to the bench, I want everybody to know he's a nigger. That from his own biographer, Robert Dallek. Johnson's sometime chauffeur, Robert Parker, was a black man. He wrote in his memoir, entitled Capitol Hill in Black and White, that Johnson had asked him whether he'd prefer to be called by his name rather than be called boy or nigger or chief. When Parker said he'd rather be referred to by name, he said Johnson grew angry. He is reported to have said to this man, as long as you are black, and you're going to be black till the day you die, no one's going to call you by your blankety blank name. End of quote. Democrat. So no matter what you are called, you just let it roll off your back like water, and you'll make it. Just pretend you're a blankety blank piece of the furniture. This is the man credited with giving people of color their due respect. Officially, 650,000 soldiers died in our Civil War. Educated estimates place it much higher, more like 850,000. Of all the wars America has fought, none were as bloody as this one. And roughly half of all American soldiers who died in combat in the 11 wars, beginning with World War I and ending with the Gulf War, died during the Civil War. What did they die for? That all men might be free, that all men might live free, as the inalienable right, the one you can't take away, guaranteed in the Constitution. The American dream was to provide just such a place, and our founding documents do not list skin color or religious affiliation or education as a prerequisite. President Johnson is the one who gave us the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, committing the federal government to help local schools. Now it's that government that runs our local schools through a National Board of Education and the funding to go with it. We even have a cabinet-level U.S. Secretary of Education. He gave us Medicare because in 1964, elderly Americans did not have health insurance. In 1964, he gave us the Civil Rights Act, tearing down the whites-only signs in segregated hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, and so forth. In 1965, he gave us the Voting Rights Act, telling Martin Luther King that the real hero is the American Negro. In 1965, Johnson enhanced conservation efforts more than any former or later president, adding creative conservation of restoration and innovation. With all the benefits this program has brought, experts within the conservation world blame one of these new innovations for the deadly forest fires we see on a regular basis. Not cleaning up the debris on the forest floor, but allowing it to accumulate. Natural. And as beautiful and breathtaking as the scenic highways, rivers, and national trail system is, they have served to remove the land from the people. Then there's the National Endowment of the Arts and Public Broadcasting, the Urban Mass Transit Act, the 1968 Housing Act, the Housing and Urban Development Act, Department of Transportation and National Transportation Safety Board, the Truth in Packaging, Truth in Lending, and many other regulatory agencies. The legacy of Lyndon Johnson is huge. It's bigger than the New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt. And he is lionized as a true racial justice hero. And he knew what he was doing. In a speech by Joseph Califano, Jr., at the centennial celebration for President Lyndon Baines Johnson back in 2008, he said Lyndon Johnson saw himself in a desperate race against time as he fought to remedy the damage slavery and generations of prejudice had inflicted on black Americans. Why? Because he feared that once black Americans sensed the prospect of a better life, the discrimination they had once accepted as inevitable would become intolerable, and they would erupt and subvert their own cause. Johnson was what we now call a progressive. It's progress for progress' sake, without thought to what chaos you might be creating along the way. The Great Society was a wonderful idea, a necessary iteration, but it was forced down our throats by government minders, men and women who knew more about what we need than we do. Men and women who have the power to establish great monoliths. Monoliths we are left to operate, deal with, defend ourselves against. Why? Because big government ideas, programs, policies tend to take on a life of their own. And they're here. And so we must now feed them. I was in my teen years in that time period, in the 1950s. I was immediately glad for my Negro friends and brothers. I did not understand what was going on in their world in the South. I didn't live with any of that. But later on, I was angry with them for their arrogance, and at the same time sympathetic. And now I am afraid for them. Many, especially in the entertainment and or sports world, seem to be marching to an entirely different drummer. No one is allowed to say or do anything that they take as derogatory toward their kind. And I say kind because there isn't any other word for it. We like the word race, but everybody knows there's only one race of sentient beings. They're called mankind, human being, Homo sapien. We are one family, not 25 competing factions. We have one set of social, moral standards. We have one reason for life and living. Today it's the pacifists, the purists, the environmentalists, the ecumenists, the progressives, the idealists, and artists who drive our moral standards. Say something, anything derogatory about them or their ideas, and you become the problem. They, of course, are permitted to be as critical of almost anyone without harm. They have a free pass. I'm talking about those in the acting world, the music world, the academic world, the political world, as long as it's the more liberal side, and of course the religious world. Again, as long as they aren't reading from a real Bible. These are the people who know, they feel, they understand. The rest of us, we're either foolish jesters or vicious maligners. But either way, we don't get it. But the question is, get what? Well, we don't get the importance of being progressive. But what about our soul? You know, the part of our being that will live forever. Oh yeah, every human being is going to live forever, somewhere. The only one who has ever been there and come back has written several books on the subject. His name is Apostle Paul. And his writings are backed up by the Lord Jesus Christ himself, who is the one and only true God incarnate. But you probably don't believe all that, do you? You're much too sophisticated, too educated to fall for all this nonsense. All right. So why do so many curse words begin or end with some form of the word God, Jesus, hell, or damnation? Think about it.